have literally held off on this as long as I can. It's Romania Black, and I'm not ready. Get this right on the camera angle. I'm not ready to be on vacation from the summer Hikaru died, but we're on episode 12, so here we are. The silver lining in all of this is that we're getting a season 2. The Horse Girl anime worked. And the Horse Girl anime game worked. And Cygames is able to produce a second season. So that's exciting. That's exciting. I know I've talked the last several weeks about all this hype about what I'm going to do with the manga and etc. But after season 2 was officially announced when I was recording episode 10, I decided, I'm like, you know what? I know I said I was going to look at volume 1 today because I do have it. I do have volume 1. Plur sent it to me. I've not read it. It's been on my shelf for quite some time. But I was like, someone had pointed out, I think it was Generation Wumbo pointed out, they're like, it's probably going to take a couple years for them to animate season 2, which I'm fine waiting that long. I told people in the comments, I have waited years for subsequent seasons of anime that are really hype on this channel. And you may think, you're like, oh, it sucks to wait. I'm like, no. That builds up the hype. That gets me excited. That gets me super engaged with what's about to happen. And it builds up that hype for the series. Everybody's excited about it. So when I realized it may take a couple years, I thought, am I going to read 1 volume of this manga and then wait years to read the rest? That seems weird. The part of my brain that likes organizing and having things in order was really getting thrown off by that. And I know I hyped it up, but I was like, I'm going to set it to a Patreon poll. I'm going to have my Patreon vote on it, and whatever they decide is what we're going to do. So we had a poll. There was 91 votes on Patreon. So thank you, Patreon, for voting. But 2/3 of the vote opted to wait until closer to seasons 2 release and then start with volume 1 and then react consecutively to volume 1, whatever season's content is, which we'll talk about in a second, along with the behind the scenes videos at the same time. Because there may be some more behind the scene videos come out in months to come, and I don't want to miss out on those because my channel gets busy and that can happen. So Rook, for episode 11, said if you want to stay blind for the anime, you can read the first 5 volumes and stop there. So I thought of it one of 2 ways. Either we get a notification like 6 months out that the season 2 is coming, and then once we get that notification, I can be like, cool, we're half a year out. I'm going to start reacting to the Summer Hikaru Died manga and the behind the scenes videos, and we can build up month to month to the season 2 release. Or, since there's 5 videos, or 5 volumes rather, I thought if they give us a surprise sneak announcement where they're like, oh, in 2 months we're going to get the release of season 2, and it's like the SpongeBob meme where papers are flying everywhere and it's like what's happening and there are fires. If that's the scenario, then if I have 5 volumes, I have 5 weeks to build up week to week towards it. So it'll work out either way, but I don't want to do 1 volume reaction today and then wait 2 years before we start volume 2. That's weird. I don't like that. The organization in me doesn't like it. So we're not going to look at volume 1 today. I'm sorry, sad story, but that does give us the opportunity that when we find out about when season 2 is going to happen, we're either going to do a month-to-month reaction building up to it, or we're going to do a week-to-week building up to it, depending on what news arrives first. So hope that works out for y'all, but thank you, Rook, for helping me get organized. That makes me feel good, so I appreciate that. With that being said, I've got several comments for episode 9, 10, and 11 to talk about. I'm so excited to hear your comments for episode 12. Whatever comments the mods say I can read for episode 12 and that will tie into the manga, I have a separate document saved because I'm a crazy person when I organize, and I will put those comments in that document, and then when we start the manga reactions, I'll just go back to that. So I will read your comments, so please let me know your thoughts about the series by the end of the season, all that good stuff. I'm excited to read it. But I do want to give a shout out before I start this comment review because there's a lot to go through. I want to give a shout out over to Patreon, to all of you who have supported me on Patreon, all of you who have been there to comment, to like the videos. And those of you on YouTube, thank you for liking, for subscribing to the channel. Please do. There's going to be a lot more awesome shows on here, and for commenting on the videos. But the philanthropy tier get shout outs in my videos. So thank you to Alex Cornejo, to Be Happy, to Bisa, to Dana, to Damage3245, to Devorin, to Destiny Marie, to Ichu, to Eric, to Faisho, to Ghostly Turnip, El Freya, Liam Posel, Lyndon, Murphew, as well as Willie Morris, Translucent Min, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Daniel, and James. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. All of my love, and all of my love as well to Plor, who is the moderator for this channel, for this series. Plor had to read through a lot of comments week to week, which is awesome, and we love to see it. But Plor donated their time, so give them a shout out in the comments, because they definitely worked really hard to make sure I wasn't spoiled for this series. Which honestly, though, I feel like with this series, I've kind of been getting, as I've been looking at the comments, kind of a Banana Fish vibe, especially online. If you don't know what that means, when Banana Fish came out, it was 2018, 2019. I started the channel in 2020. I did not have a moderator back then. Scary times, I know. But everyone with Banana Fish, with that show, no one spoiled in the comments. And people were like, no, 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 we want you to suffer. We want to watch you week to week suffering. We want to lick your tears and bathe in them. And I was like, well, that's kind of creepy, but cool. And so I honestly was so thankful for that time. I would rather have viewers be a bunch of sadists and want me to suffer and then like soak in my vitriol, my sadness to revigorate themselves than try to spoil. So I've gotten that vibe online. I've been really fortunate that because I have a Twitter and I have some social media accounts and some outside the channel, I've been really lucky that I've not seen any spoilery things. It's just mainly been Hikaru and Yoshiki needing a hug, which is valid. So I'm glad that those vibes are there. So let's dive into these comments. James 763 for episode 9 says, I think it's worth noting the name Tanaka is like the equivalent of the name Smith. Super common. It's not quite the same thing as being named John Doe or John Smith, but it's suspiciously nondescript. I definitely think that, which is kind of funny now because I think of Tanaka and Haikyuu and how he's kind of like the everyman, and that's really funny now in hindsight. But yeah, I definitely think that Tanaka is maybe operating under a false name and definitely is Rie's son. And they need to meet, but I'm kind of scared for them to meet. So we're going to talk more about that in these comments because I've had some revelations since episode 11, if you can believe it. 2 a.m. Cryptid for episode 9 says, Rie is not from Kubatachi, so she wouldn't know about Nanuki. There are 5 smaller villages surrounding a much larger town called Kiboyama, and that's where Rie lives. Both Hikaru and Yoshiki go to Kiboyama for school, and they seem to be the only teens from Kubatachi that are there. That's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, the fact that Hikaru and Yoshiki are like the only 2 kids in this creepy village feels interesting. I know the Indo family is tied to the Indo family ritual and stuff, but I'm like, if they're the only kids in this village, who are they expected to marry? I guess people outside the village, but interesting that they don't want outsiders, but yet they're kind of, it's almost like an inbreeding situation. If you don't get outsiders, what are you going to do? Also, I find it interesting that Nonuki has over time just been contained to this one village. It's interesting. Like we said last episode, there's something there that's not being said, and we need to talk a little bit more about it, which we're going to. And then AAL.M765 agreed with the above comment, saying, I like that even though there's a lot of exposition in this part of the series, no one has all of the answers, just bits and pieces. And each character's personal experiences influence how they perceive the information they do have, which leads to all the conflicting perspectives. The elders know about the town's religion and history, but they fear that Nonuki or Unuki and the impurities so much that they don't understand them fundamentally. And while Rie doesn't know about the religion and Nonuki, she knows how to deal with impurities better than anyone and can be more sympathetic to Hikaru. Which is a really good point to bring up, so thank you for that. Toki Bun Bun for episode 9 says, I find it interesting that Hikaru can recall the shed, the memories of Hikaru's childhood, as well as all the other mundane stuff, but it draws a blank whenever it's something related to itself. It makes me really curious what caused all of Hikaru's memory and its memory of itself to get repressed after it took over Hikaru's body. My first thought was that maybe Hikaru despised it and blamed it for his dad's death, and the memories got repressed because Hikaru was trying to forget everything related to it. But in the flashback we had, it didn't sound like he was angry at Nonuki or Unuki-sama when he made his wish. I hope we get a good explanation regarding that. It's not dismissed or forgotten. Oh, I don't think it's going to get dismissed or forgotten. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because I have a theory about that. We're going to come back to that here in a little bit when we get into some like episode 10, episode 11 comments. Also, was the thing that possessed Old Man Takeda the wig impurity from a couple episodes ago? I remember it managed to get away after Hikaru shot it out of Yoshiki's head. If it was, it's interesting to think it might have acted in revenge because of last time. It's also a bit worrying that if they encounter more impurities in the future they can't defeat, they might come back repeatedly, like what happened this time, assuming it's the same impurity. Yeah, the fact that these impurities are just going to keep coming back and trying to possess different people is a bit scary. And the fact that that one guy that killed himself in the parking lot might have been possessed by an impurity and he murdered himself. He committed suicide. So the impurity went somewhere else. We think, maybe, possibly. So that's not good. That's not good at all. So yeah, interesting things to think about. But I have a theory about Hikaru and all of that. Mary CeeLo, 77 for episode 9, says, my personal understanding from what we got from Ray's backstory is it wasn't the husband's body being possessed, but an impurity containing the husband's soul. It was far less human-like, and it couldn't go around like Hikaru fooling anyone into being a real person. It almost seemed like it couldn't leave the room, but that's just an assumption. I don't know if I agree with that, because I don't know, because otherwise, like, you would think the souls would get reincarnated, so I'm not sure exactly how that worked. I thought the dad was possessed by an impurity, and it altered him, but like what happened with Takeda. But again, we don't know the full story, so we might have to just wait on that one. Vero-chan for episode 9, and also has a comment for episode 10. Vero-chan for episode 9 says, I like Rie being an ally. She reminds me of an adopted aunt who has grown fond of these two complicated kids who are really in need of help and some good advice. Also, her being the middle point in regards to how people view ghosts in the town seems to be pretty accurate. Now, all we need to know is if her son is actually Takeda or not, or Tanaka or not, and what will be the consequences if she's revealed to be his mom. I find it suspicious that despite being so involved in the stuff happening around, they never once have crossed paths, or somebody has never mentioned one of the two while in conversation with the other, especially considering Rie is apparently well known in the town. Yeah, the fact that Tanaka and her haven't talked when he's been going around talking to all the people that know things in the town seems to allude to the fact that he doesn't want anything to do with her. He may have very well been told about Rie and he was just like, oh, okay, cool, and just ignored her because he knew who she is. But we'll have to see on that. Vero-chan also had a comment about this related in episode 10 saying, one thing that surprised me was Rie knowing about the company. But does she know that he's also working there? What is this company? How is he able to make glasses that let blind people see? How is he able to see before joining it? I was suspicious about this company since the moment Tanaka said he'd rather sacrifice his own organs than follow their methods, implying they're no good, but we don't know anything about them. And then it's like, well, why is he working for them? Clearly for revenge. But that there's lots of questions about Tanaka, about Rie, about the company. I am hopeful that episode 12 is going to give us a wee bit of exposition regarding it, but they're going to keep a lot close to the vest until next season. That is pretty clear. Tanaka is like one of the end game bosses, if not with the leader of the organization that he is his boss. So I feel as if we're going to have to wait till season 2 to find out everything, and I'm fine with that. I'd rather them. What I don't want, and what I'm very happy this season doesn't seem like it's going to do, and again, I'm knock on wood, is I was afraid that they weren't going to give us a season 2, and they were just going to do like what happens in some BL series that don't get second seasons. They just dump some exposition from the end and be like, oh, go catch up in the manga and see what we left out. I was afraid that was going to happen, but now that we know there's a season 2, I'm like, okay, they're probably not going to do that, so good. Moomin, again, we're going to talk about some things referring to the theory about the town. Rook says the part of this episode that really resonated with me was Hikaru jokingly asking how the friend group... Oh, actually, I'm going to save that. because I'm going to talk about my little theory real quick with HBanana7 and Moomin's comments. We're going to save Rook's comment for the end before we start the new episode. Moomin says, so the mercury reminded me of an environmental disaster that was faced in the 1950s with far-reaching consequences of mercury poisoning. It happened in the town of Minamata and is referred to as the Minamata disaster. They gave a link to the wiki article about it. It's horrific. It's terrifying. Read about the Minamata disease at your own risk because the images are pretty graphic. Not unwatchable, but pretty graphic. I wanted to tie that into HBanana7's comment saying with Hikaru crying at Rie's house, he was such a sweetheart bean. I was so relieved he found solace and safety in Rie, even though she could have hurt him. I was also thinking about the theory we talked about last week that Hikaru or Nonuki was born from unborn children. Here's my thing. I was thinking about that before starting this episode. I believe my theory is that Hikaru is in fact a spirit that has come about because now whether it's an Indo family unborn child or someone else's, we don't know for sure yet, but I think that Hikaru is spirit. The Eldritch monster is born from an unborn child. Like that's where it comes from. And I think, related to Moomin's comment, that the people in the village were poisoning themselves and all of these abortions and all of these things happening, some of which were self-inflicted by the murder village, don't get me wrong, but a lot of it had to do with that poisoning and the Yanuki medicine and everything, and it's all tying together, which would explain why Hikaru is so innocent when he first possesses Hikaru. It explains why Hikaru, isn't resentful necessarily of him. It makes sense of why he might be connected, and if he's an unborn child, he doesn't have any memories from being alive. So, yeah, that might all connect together. But we'll see if that happens or we get any information about it in episode 12. We'll see about that. So the last couple of comments are related about Hikaru himself. Amber Sandra on Discord for episode 11 said Hikaru's monster form reminds them of an oil slick where it's black, but when the light hits it, it reflects this like rainbow of colors, which I think is a perfect description of it. It's such a good description. And also it kind of adds to like the monstrosity of it. And oil, you think of something being kind of like dirty or filthy. Adds to that mentality of where Hikaru's mental state is right now. So then I have 3 comments here, and I know this is a long intro, but it's the season finale. What'd y'all expect? Rook, for episode 10, says the part of this episode that really resonated with me was Hikaru, jokingly, asking how the friend group would react if the spirit was with them now, and how hurt he looked when they responded with the scary, we'd obviously send it back to where it belongs. It's so familiar to the common queer experience of jokingly asking friends how they'd react to a friend being queer in order to gauge how accepting of it they would be. When I jokingly asked my friends as a kid how they'd react to me being gay in a small town, I got a similar response, and I still remember how much it hurt. It really struck a chord to see that reflected in Hikaru with the indirect rejection of what he is. I love how well this mangaka can tell 2 stories at once, a literal story about ghosts and monsters, and the metaphorical story about growing up queer in a small town. And I can't applaud the writing enough. That makes me emotional for you, Rook, and I'm going to try not to cry, but that makes me very emotional. And I have friends that have gone through that same experience, and so that breaks my heart. And it kind of ties into these other 2 comments where Sparata6232 says, Hikaru's insecurity is growing and it's heartbreaking to watch. He's learning so much about humanity, but as he connects to so many human experiences, it becomes that much clearer that his true self is inhuman on a fundamental level. I can't imagine the level of anxiety this would cause him, not feeling in control of the parts he doesn't understand or fears. And that ties into Rinth's comment for episode 11, saying the guilt Hikaru feels. He has taken on the label of a monster to heart, whereas earlier in the season, he didn't seem to really identify with it. I wonder if Yoshiki as a child already identified with monster characters because he felt different in some way when he was young. We talked about that in discussion. So yes, they should just call Kubatachi Mountain the mountain of unresolved feelings. Well, that's saying it very, very understated. Here's my thing. I will stand by this statement until the day I die. Children are born innocent and unprejudiced. And the fact that Hikaru could be a spirit created from an unborn child that didn't know any of these prejudice says a lot, but prejudice is taught, it's learned, and hatred is learned. So if you are around people that are hateful or say hateful things, you absorb that, especially at a young age. And Hikaru essentially is a spirit that's technically at a young age. So he's absorbing all this prejudice and it's really affecting him, which I'm hopeful that because Yoshiki's been dealing with that his whole life. And we've seen how the tables have turned from the OG Hikaru being a source of sanctuary for Yoshiki to now this new Hikaru being accepting of Yoshiki regardless, which is something in itself. But I want to see Yoshiki kind of come to his own and come to terms with his sexuality and who he is and his identity, and use that platform to raise up Hikaru, and say, you don't have to be that way. I'm here to support you. This is how this is, and we're going to get past it. I want to see the tables turn a little bit more, and I think that's what we're going to get, if not in this episode, in season 2. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, I know I've talked 20 minutes about this intro, but y'all had amazing comments and I've really enjoyed reading them. And I'm really excited to read your comments for episodes 11 and 12. So I understand we need to start, but I just want to say thank you all so much. I'm delaying the inevitable, which is ripping off the Band-Aid that is this season finale. But I've been so hyped all week to watch it. So we're not going to waste any more time. Okay, we're going to start The Summer Hikaru Died, episode 12. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Reading the first volume would have done nothing. Reading the first volume would have done nothing to alleviate that feeling of... That is honestly one of the most satisfying and yet so teasing season finales that I've watched for a series that's getting a season 2. Thank God. I definitely feel as if there might have been a little bit more drawn out in the manga, or there will be when we get to that scene of them and their confession. I feel like there was just a little part of me that felt like maybe they cut a smidgen to make it fit in the time frame, but I needed that. I needed Yoshiki to finally have a come to terms moment about himself, because he's been skirting around it the entire series. He's been wanting to say it, but he's been skirting around it, and he finally gets to where he's going to talk about it. And it seems like him and Hikaru are like, okay, we've come to a conclusion of how we feel about each other. We're not going to the damn mountain. We're not going back in the closet. We're moving forward. The question is, I don't trust Tanaka. I just don't. And Tanaka seems like this very, very morally gray character that is doing things for his own agenda. And he just sees that, oh, well, Hikaru's stuck in the body of this dead boy who this other boy was in love with. And he saw that entire conversation go down. So he kind of has an idea as an outside perspective of where we're at with these two. So I feel very nervous about him in season 2. I feel like Tanaka is going to be like, yeah, I can help you guys. But I feel like it's very self-serving, which is kind of funny because Yoshiki's admitted in this episode, he's like, well, I've been kind of self-serving too. So, maybe they'll be fine with it. I don't know. Maybe Tanaka's gay too. Who knows? We don't know if that's the case. But Tanaka being left with Hikaru. And I'm just going to call him Hikaru in this episode because I don't want to do the air quotes every time, and I don't want to say Nonuki and all that, but we'll just call him Hikaru for this episode. But with Hikaru and Yoshiki, and then we have the idea of the organization woman, with Rie. Here's the crazy thing is I'm pretty sure that I think that Tanaka is Rie's son. I think that he did not want to go talk to Rie because he doesn't want to deal. Tanaka has some unresolved conflicts with his family that he doesn't want to deal with right now, so he's avoiding it. You do you. And so he sent the woman from the organization to talk with Rie. Now, my nervousness with Tanaka, because Tanaka talks to the Takada guy, we'll get to that scene. My nervousness with Tanaka is that he seems like he wants to help. He seems like he wants to work with Yoshiki and Hikaru to find out what's going on. I feel like he's doing that for his own self-serving purposes. which I'm sure we'll get into in season 2. My thing is, Rie has been such an ally for them, and she's been this motherly presence, which I feel ties into the idea that Nanuki could be connected to the spirit of an unborn child and it granting wishes. I like the idea of this unborn spirit granting wishes because it wasn't given the chance to have the opportunity to live, so it's trying to help others. We'll see where that goes. Who knows? It also kills people, so who knows? There's something malicious involved in that as well. But then again, it could be just like this innocent neutrality that's just like, if you attack me, I'm going to attack back. I don't know. Don't know yet. We'll find out in season 2. But I feel like Rie has this kind of kind and considerate, neutrality herself to be like, well, I think this, but should I think that? And Hikaru has a mom. Should I act? Because, at the end of the day, even though it's a possessed corpse, it's still the body of her kid. And if she finds out her kid has been possessed by the spirit the entire time, what do we do with that? So it's like, So I feel like Rie wants to help, but Tanaka, because he has this unresolved conflict with his mother, does not want her involved or does not want to be in the same room as her. So there's this unnecessary separation. At some point in season 2, the two of them are going to have to sit down and talk or yell at each other like in an ocean like Hikaru and Yoshiki have. But they're going to have to come together at some point and have a conversation. And Tanaka is just avoiding that for the time being. So there's a separation there. Also, we have the idea of the village, which also has Yoshiki's family included, and friends. And Tanaka says that he is on the side of humanity, but that, as we've seen in this series, does not necessarily mean a good thing. Humans are monsters sometimes. Sometimes humans are more monstrous than any monster we can make up. So being on the side of humanity does not give me warm, fuzzy feelings. It makes me think that Tanaka would be complicit with violence against Hikaru. It makes me think he would be complicit with doing things that would be... this is a murder village. They killed people and sacrificed them willingly. And Tanaka points out in this episode, he's like, you did that for no reason, except that you've got some religious psychosis going on, and you're all a bunch of crazies. So, him being on the side of humanity does not lead me to believe that he's going to be doing little good Samaritan deeds in season 2, which makes me nervous with him being around these two. Because these two are trying to figure out exactly what Hikaru is and how to help the village despite that, or in addition to. And I think that Tanaka shares some of the same goals in this because that ties to helping the village out as well, and it creates this little cycle here. But what I think Tanaka is also trying to do is also get closure and possibly revenge on the spirit that took his sight. Now, we know that wasn't Hikaru. That was an impurity. But then the question remains, if Hikaru was up in the mountain being a lightning rod for all the impurities, how'd this one get down to attack Tanaka way back when? How did that go about? How did that happen? We don't know. What's the deal with that? So I could see Tanaka wanting to work with them to find out about Hikaru and the entity inside of him. But then what Tanaka does with that information makes me a wee bit nervous. Then we have Asako, who we'll talk about in this. And I put Asako by herself, not only because she is somewhat clairvoyant because of her family, which ties to Rie and Tanaka and all them, but also because I think she's queer. I think she's lesbian. I think she likes Yuki. And I think that this episode made it abundantly clear that Asako is also one of them in terms of her being like Hikaru and Yoshiki. Hikaru is not even human, but I think she's queer like Yoshiki because throughout this series, she has been somewhat othered without it drawing attention to the fact. And so the question is whether Yuki is queer or not. That's the big question. Or if Asako is going to, kind of have this unrequited love. But I feel Asako's queer and she's, one of them. And she will hopefully in season 2, now that she knows the truth about Hikaru and it's out in the open that she's going to be an ally to Yoshiki and help them out in the next season. I'm excited about that. I really like Asako's character, and I like the dynamic between her and Hikaru. I really like the dynamic between them in this episode, so I'm hopeful that that's all gonna come to play. But this episode gave us nothing about Tanaka and the organization. I thought for sure that there was going to be a confrontation between Tanaka and the mom. No. I thought we were going to see maybe the woman from the organization. No. I thought we were going to get something about Tanaka and him talking with Hikaru and Yoshiki. They baited us at the end. No. So now we have to wait. This episode was gorgeous. This episode was beautiful. The opening shot of the rain droplets on the maple leaves. Y'all, just stop right there. Go support that horse girl game. I'm not here for gambling. I don't gamble, but if supporting that horse girl game will get us some animation like this, go do it. I don't know. Be responsible. But we have the opening. A lot of like final moments from the OP were addressed in this episode, which was nice. I like when it all comes full circle. The ED comes full circle as well. That was awesome. I will say this. I don't know how the second season's going to top the first season's OP. That song has been such a bop, such a jam. It's been one of my favorite OPs in the last few years for an anime, and I don't know how they're going to top it. They probably will, but I just don't know how. It was just keep the 80s synth vibes. Those vibes work great. But yeah, so Hikaru starts out this episode reenacting the master plot line where he's like, I need to go back to where I used to be. And he's like, no. He's like, now that we finally become friends. The thing of it is, Hikaru wants Yoshiki to want him to stay. He knows that logically it makes sense for him to go back to the village, to the mountain, and everybody in the village has been encouraging him to go back to the mountain. But he knows that logically makes sense with what's going on, but he doesn't want to go. And he wants Yoshiki to tell him that he should stay. And he almost convinces himself, of things that are not founded by reality, just his own assumptions. I feel bad for him. We're going to skip. I hate skipping intro, but we need to get into this episode. So we have the scene at home. I want to point out that the symbolism with the dad, he is sitting, his chair is crooked, is cocked away from the table. He is sitting with his back to his wife reading, like he is not really part of the family unit. The symbolism could not be more clear. And I honestly, that makes me really wish that, and I hope in season 2 we get it. I think we will eventually. I think that Yoshiki and Hikaru are going to have to leave the village to either do research or go with Tanaka to the organization or do something. Or if the organization is looking for Hikaru and Tanaka's like, actually, I don't like the organization. I've just been using them, and he's going to help them get away from it. I don't know. But I feel like they're going to have to leave the village to research at some point. And I feel like the dad will support them once he figures out what's going on. I think he'll support it. I really do. And that's kind of the part from last episode that made me so sad, was Yoshiki believes that his dad is not going to be accepting of him. Yoshiki's dad wants better for his son, but I think two things can be true at once, where Yoshiki's dad wants Yoshiki to end up better than him, but he also can love and accept his son and his choices. And so I think that's what's going to end up happening. But man, the symbolism could not be clearer. So they decided to get a pool ring. And, Kaoru is not wrong. The part where you have to blow up a pool ring, it sucks. And he's like, do you still need those books? And he's like, yeah, I still need them. I think the family is surprised the two of them are talking. And he's like, you can keep them as long as you want. The dad is not a bad guy. And I honestly, throughout this entire series, I expected two things to happen when I started this series, if I'm honest with you all. One, I expected that at some point the entity or an impurity or Tanaka was going to hurt his family. That scene in the OP with the knife falling in the blood, every time I saw it leading up to episode 7 or 8, every time I saw it, I thought that some impurity was going to try to stab the family or the mom or something. And I had in my head this whole scenario planned out. Not that Hikaru was going to get stabbed by Yoshiki, but something entirely different. And I also thought that the dad was going to be this big barrier I thought the dad was going to be like, no, Yoshiki, you can't be gay because I was gay and whatever. But I have been pleasantly surprised at how supportive the dad has been throughout this series. So that's good. But yeah, so then we go back into town. I'm excited to get into the manga because I feel like there's possibly other things that have been glossed over or were cut out for time's sake. Like, I want to know more about Maki and the incident with his arm and what caused it, because it was like Takeda was the name they threw out. So it's clearly like the kid of someone, like maybe Old Man Takeda's grandson or something. But I want to know more about Maki and all that. The strained relationship between Maki and Yuki continues to be interesting. And then poor Asako, she just like is trying to figure out what to do with the information about Hikaru that she learned the other day. I do love the anime trope that Japanese students do where they go on summer break and they leave the message on the board in chalk. It's super cute. And the way that they draw their PE teacher and he's like, is this really what I look like? Or the music teacher. Love it. Really fun. But yeah, Hikaru being late for school and him just kind of... this felt like, again, episode 7 was the midway point, and this feels like the other half of that, whereas back in episode 7, Yoshiki was like, well, I'm going to end everything, and then possibly I'm going to die, and this is just how it's going to be, and now we're seeing Hikaru's side of it, where he's kind of doing like one last tour of everything, and he wants to go see the ocean with Yoshiki, and he wants to do all the things they said they were going to do, and then he's going to leave him and go back into the mountain. But, I mean, in all honesty, the mountain at this point, I don't think you can go back. I think Yoshiki's right, you can't go back. It's Pandora's box has opened, you can't go back. Because even if, I like that Hikaru's like, well, I don't know what'll happen if I leave Hikaru's body. I don't know if I will go back to how things were before. And Yoshiki's like, exactly. You could leave Hikaru's body, but that doesn't matter because you can't go back to being the little red ball of orb just floating through the forest. That's not going to happen anymore. And the fact that it was a little red ball, an orb like the Inuki medicine, that feels like it's tied together somehow. But I agree, you can't go back to the way things were. Once you know, and you can't, what has been seen cannot be unseen. But, I mean, I feel as if, first of all, the timing is perfect. Like summer break, they got a couple weeks off. They can go research. They can leave the village and go do things. Sets everything up for... I feel like, okay, the series is called The Summer Hikaru Died. So this next season is going to probably take place over the summer break before the end of summer. So the series is probably going to... I don't know if there's enough manga to cover more than 2 seasons. I don't know. Honestly... I'm torn because I would watch a series about these two forever, but I also would love if whatever the results of what they find out and all this mystery is like the end of the series. I don't know how that's going to go. I know the series is ongoing right now, so we'll see. But it would be fitting to me if the series ended when summer ended and the series was just about the summer Hikaru died and that was it. Now, I want a happy ending for these two. I want a happy ending for our monster and our monster lovers, so don't let me down, show. But yeah, I also think it's fitting that they have, just like in the choir from episode 7, you have everyone singing, and the 3 that don't sing are Hikaru, because he's not one of the choir, one of the townsfolk, one of the humans. Yoshiki, who's gay, who does not fit into the heteronormative standard of the village, and Asako, who I don't think fits the standard either. So that's all interesting to me. And I love Asako's confrontation with Hikaru. I love it. I love it. It felt so, this moment where the two of them, where she's like, they're gonna, call you out for sneaking out during the performance. He's like, they won't get mad. I'll tell them I was pooping. Like, I felt like the tension between Asako and Hikaru was so well done, because it felt like two people that they did this. They're like, I see you back. And they just know, right? And I love the platonic dynamic between Hikaru. People talked in episode 7 about Yoshiki being jealous of Hikaru and thinking he was making an advance towards Asako, which at the time I was like, no, we all know that wasn't the case. Even if it may came across to Yoshiki like that. But I like the idea of Hikaru and Asako having this like platonic friendship and kind of viewing each other sort of as equals in a way, which is really neat. But yeah, she finally confronts him. So then we cut to whenever we saw the hay there, I know that now I can see the background, and the background's the countryside. For a hot second, I thought Tanaka was just going to show up on Rie's door, but she lives in an apartment that is not with this scenery behind it. He's like, I have something to discuss with you. And he's like, it's about Nanuki-sama. And of course, the Takeda man gets freaked out. And he says, this whole time, I thought he was going to say it was Hikaru. The whole time. And he's like, no, it never existed. And I'm like, oh. He's like, it never existed. He's like, you all made up a fictitious god. And he's like, what? He's like, that ridiculous Indo ritual was utterly pointless from the start. So, what I think the scenario is that I do think there is a spirit. I think that Hikaru is a spirit that is formed from the unborn children or an unborn child. One of the two. From either one of this unborn children or unborn spirit that is connected to the village. And that it is a spirit, a deity that has been created through those spirits. How? Why? I don't know. We'll probably find out in season 2. But I think that's what it is. Then I think that there was all of this mercury poisoning that was happening on the mountain. Especially if they were mining the mercury, because exposure and all of that. Mercury is really toxic if you're exposed to it. So the exposure caused all of this poisoning, all these abortions, all this stuff to happen. And what I think it was is I think that the village leaders, not that any religious organization has ever done this before in the history of religious organizations, but I think they might have taken advantage of the terrible disaster happening and used it as a power grab in the village. Never's happened before. But I'm just saying, I think the village leaders might have used it as a way to stress their power and authority against people that they didn't like. Now, again, they had famine and all the other stuff going on in the village. And then I think the Indo, they got involved. Now, the head that came back to life and the granting of wishes and requests, we still got to explore that in season 2. So that's all going to come out in the wash, I'm sure. But maybe the spirit of Hichi's unborn child granted the wish. Maybe it gained power somehow. I don't know how this spirituality works. We'll see. But the ritual, as well as all of the sacrifice, was just religious psychosis and weirdness to justify and explains things that had happened, right? So essentially what Tanaka is saying, he's like, y'all been murdering people for hundreds of years for no reason, and it didn't do shit. That's never happened in the history of anything. He's like, it was pointless from the start. He's like, what are you talking about? And that would be a hard pill to swallow if you had been following. I mean, because here's the thing. Humans are proud creatures. And if you staked most of your life on this fundamental belief of something that turns out not to be true, you're going to feel pretty bad about that. And you're going to think you look a fool. And you're going to get mad about it. And then you're going to blame somebody else. So what do we do with that? Usually people get hurt when that happens. So he's like, there's an underlying cause behind all of this. So Tanaka's like, have no fear. There is a reason that all of this has occurred. He's like, this whole Nanuki thing was all made up by the village and it's been passed down for generations and it's utter hokum. But he's like, I intend to do something about it. Yep. And if I succeed, the villagers can avoid being wiped out. So he says that Tanaka is going to take action. And in doing so, he's going to be able to save the village. Now, there's a lot that is unsaid in that statement There is a lot that is unsaid in that statement. It very well could turn out to be that Tanaka does not want to get his mom involved because he's afraid that she'll interfere with what his plans are. And he's like, I got this. Because and I'm fully saying this, believing that Tanaka is Rie's son. So in the last episode, we saw what we think is a young Tanaka. And when Rie thinks something, Tanaka's like, well, that's a stupid thing to do. Again, in this series, there is a lot of people, a lot of characters are in their minds perceiving how others react to what they do. And the thing is, we don't know as the audience what is the reality and what's just in their head delusion. So Rie could think that her son is like this. And Tanaka could turn out to be like, no, I'm actually helping you, Mom. Just need you to back off and let me do my thing. That could be the case. Or Tanaka's like, it's either one of several things, as it would be. Either Tanaka is thinking, the organization is going to try to do something. I don't like the organization. I'm working for them because it's advantageous to me. It's like, enemy of my enemy is my friend. And he's like, I know they're about to do something and I don't like it necessarily. So I want to work with these two to figure out what's going on so we can kind of beat the organization ahead of its game. Or he's totally working with the organization and he's like, hey, we are going to have to take some action against whatever's going on here to make sure the village doesn't die for whatever reason. And that's why I'm working with these two. Or he's tricking these two. Or he's trying to get his mom out of the way so she's not possibly implicated or hurt in this. But the woman in the organization's talking to Rie. So it's like, does Tanaka know about that? Does he not know about that? There are a lot of possibilities in motion. And we as the audience, if you're anime only, don't have enough information to know exactly what's going on. So I don't want to exactly say like, this is what's happening, but there's lots of possibilities. But he wants to take action to save the village, to avoid it being wiped out. So possibly there is a force that is even bigger than Hikaru affecting all of this that he knows about that we don't know about. So we'll see. Or he's just saying that to get them on his side. So then we cut back to Asako and Hikaru. And she's like, I'll have my homework done in the first week. And he's like, I love doing homework. And it's funny when he said that he loves doing the homework. When he said that, I thought back to when Yoshiki said that Hikaru wasn't a good student and he didn't like homework. And I was like, that's how you're different. So I wondered if Asako noticed that too. She doesn't say anything, but she does say that you always waited to the last day and bawled her eyes out while doing it. He's like, I'm going to get it done too. And she says, so you're not really Hikaru, are you? I've compared this series to Given a lot. And there is a moment in Given where that damn BL curtain comes in and masks people's thoughts and intentions and actions. It's a BL trope. I'm just pointing it out, but it's there. And she's like, I saw you the other day and you weren't the usual Hikaru, even your voice. Which is interesting because when she said even your voice, it was, was she talking about his literal voice or the voice she hears in her head was not matching the Hikaru, like the spirit or the essence of him, right? And he's like, oh, well, you did it again, Asako. You shouldn't say that stuff out loud to me. I do like that she says she's not going to tell anybody. And of all people to know about Hikaru's actual identity, Asako is the perfect person because her grandmother taught her about acceptance and about that even people that seem strange and unusual and weird are not malicious or harmful. They're just different, which is such a good thing to know as a child. Wish more people would teach that. But because of it, she literally saves her skin. She doesn't act rashly or violently. She's just like, it's weird and I don't know what to do with it, but I'm not going to tell anybody. And I don't want you not to be here. I mean, like, Asako is so good in this episode. She's such a perfect ally. She's like, I don't understand, but I don't want you to not be here. And then that's when, she asks where, the actual Hikaru is. And Hikaru tells her, he's like, well, nope. He's like, I'm just a corpse. He's like, I promised I wouldn't kill anybody and that I wouldn't hurt you. And she's like, you're not really human, are you? Is the real Hikaru alive somewhere? And when he tells her no, she's like, I figured, but... And that's when she started to cry. I think that this scene where he wipes the tears away from her eyes is really interesting. I thought he was going to hug her. I thought he was going to hug her, honestly, and just give her like an embrace in that moment. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. But he wipes the tear away. What's interesting is that in this moment, normally when he's reached for Yoshiki, he's been reaching for Yoshiki's soul, which is this bright burning flame. And here, it's kind of the opposite. He reaches for Asako, but it's because she's sad and she's crying. And like Yoshiki has cried in this series, but he's done it to where he's tried to hide it like between his knees where Hikaru can't see it. And at the time, Hikaru wasn't exactly sure what to do about that because he was still wrestling with these emotions and the OG Hikaru's memories and everything. Here he wipes away her tears. But if you notice, he's really drawn to her in that moment because of her emotion, because of her sadness. And I feel in that moment, Hikaru and the entity that he is can relate to that sadness. He's like, oh, you crying and you being sad, I know what that feels like. I felt lonely and sad like that. And he's drawn to it to be like, I know what that emotion is. And then he wipes her tears away. It's a really sweet moment. I love it. I love that he does that for her. And that just furthers, on the one hand, it furthers her notion that Hikaru is not going to hurt her and that he's not a harmful presence. But also you have to wonder, would the real OG Hikaru have done the same? Or, because here's the difference. We've talked about it in previous episodes. The OG Hikaru, as Yoshiki describes him, was very closed off and very doesn't show his cards and is very reserved and just kind of emotionally distant while still being accepting and kind. This monster Hikaru is very open with his emotions and very empathetic and very heart on his sleeve sort of thing. So you have to wonder if Asako in that moment realized that this is in fact a very different person in front of her. And he's like, oh, right. And he's like, everyone should have mourned for Hikaru like this. This scene was so heartbreaking and so sad. And it's so complicated because if you think about it, it's not just, oh, I should be dead and I'm alive. He's in someone else's body. So he's like, no one can mourn Hikaru because I'm stuck in his body. And you have the casket with the flowers. I love the color spotting with the flowers. It's so beautiful. And you had the mush, the shiitake manju, the master, the jersey, the shoes. He's like, everyone could mourn me. That's what Hikaru asked for, but still. But honestly, this is where it gets interesting because the series, again, is about perception and about how we perceive what people think. And you can't do that. You don't know what people think. You don't know. You're not in their brain. And so when he's like, he was asked by Hikaru to take care of everyone and to make sure they're not sad. When he's sitting there being like, well, this is what Hikaru would have wanted. I'm like, I don't know if it is. I don't know if you're interpreting it the right way. He's like, Yoshiki could have grieved with the others. And he wouldn't be suffering like he is now. I strongly disagree with. As much as Yoshiki has suffered throughout this series, and as much as he's had to come to term and reconcile, Hikaru, the entity being there and letting him find this way of grief and closure and moving through it is so valuable. If Hikaru had just died, he would have been in such a darker place. I am convinced of that. And people may disagree, but I think he would have been in such a darker place if he hadn't had Hikaru around. He would have struggled in his inability to come to terms with his sexuality and been suffocated in that town if it hadn't been for Hikaru, the entity, helping him to branch out and to be a monster to help him find connection. That's the thing, too. That's what separates him from his dad. Because his dad couldn't do that. His dad reached out to Kohei, but we don't know if Kohei was gay or bisexual or if he was just straight like he seemed. So because Yoshiki's dad, Toshi, couldn't get any resolution, he just settled in the village, married this woman that he doesn't necessarily love in the same way that he probably should being married to her, and is not happy. And Yoshiki would have been in the same boat as we see in this upcoming scene. And so it took monster eldritch Hikaru in this body to relate to Yoshiki and help Yoshiki see a mirror of himself and see that it's okay to be a monster. It's okay to be different, and it's okay to not follow the norm, because Hikaru showed him that. And if the body had just died in the mountain and that was it, he would have ended up exactly like his dad. But Hikaru doesn't know that. And the thing is, Hikaru doesn't want to see Yoshiki suffering. He's like, they would have moved on and did college and stuff, and maybe they'd be better off. But the thing is, you don't know that. The thing is, you can't know that. You can't predict that. You can't predict what other people's lives would be like. And that's when he says he's sorry. I feel that Asako is going to be an ally to them. I feel like Asako, now that she knows the truth and they've grieved together, I feel like she's going to be an ally to them. And I feel like Yoshi's going to... I would love to have in season 2 a conversation between Asako and Yoshiki. I would love for that to happen, so the two of them could talk it out. That would be amazing. If she came out to Yoshiki, that'd be even better. But we'll see. We'll see where that goes. But anyway, so we had like the stream, the rings. We've got like everybody hanging out and going through the river and floating. Feels very small town. So there's this baby. So all of these they all have, God, the genetics in this family. They all have the same eyebrows. The genetics are strong in Yoshiki's family. I want to talk about this scene with the people in the household, because I grew up in a small town. My family is very heteronormative. There are not any, to my knowledge, queer people in my family. So, or if there are, they've not come out. Which I don't know. Being asexual and on the spectrum there, I struggle with, because I know that there is some erasure of people on the spectrum if they're asexual or not. So how that works into there, I guess I would be in that case, but it's still like there's a large question mark over that. But anyway, that's my personal business. But I have been around this culture that is expressed in this scene with Kaoru and Yoshiki my entire life. And when you see it on screen, the way that it's presented, it is so disturbing. That's the best way to describe it. Because here's the thing, I've held babies. I've babysat. I love babies. I love toddlers more than babies. Babies are just so helpless, and you just sit there and you're like, oh, you're cute. Maybe. Babies are one thing. But the symbolism of this scene, you have Kaoru, who's just trying to be a little girl holding a baby. That's all she's doing. There's nothing wrong with that. But then you have this authoritative presence where this woman has her hands on Kaoru's shoulder, like she's latching in her claws to be like, you will be heteronormative, whether you like it or not. Where she's like, you should get married and have some healthy babies too, Kaoru. First of all, that mentality and saying that to a child is very disturbing for a number of reasons. One, you are assuming that they are heterosexual and you're putting that you are conditioning that heterosexuality onto that kid without them even knowing their own identity. Because I'll tell you right now, from my best friend in high school who is gay, he's been gay his whole life. And we knew in grade school that he was. But because he just was. And he's known since he was a kid. He was born that way. And so, but because our community we grew up in was so heteronormative, those values kept getting pushed on him. And I hated that. In hindsight, I hated that happening, because now I look at it and I'm like, oh, you're pushing a lot on these kids, which can really psychologically damage them later on, especially if it's like Yoshiki and you find out that you're queer and you're like, oh my God, am I a monster? Am I an other? What do I do with this? And it creates all of these conditioning. But also, even if Kaoru is heterosexual and likes boys, even if that's the case, to tell a kid you should get married and have some healthy babies too, what if she has fertility issues? What if she finds out she can't have kids? You've put all of this pressure and stress on a young girl, and you've attributed her self-worth and value to whether or not she can have babies. And what if she can't do that? Then you've suddenly attributed that she has no self-worth. And that pisses me off a lot, because I know friends of mine who have fertility issues and they can't have kids and they're in heterosexual relationships. So it's just like, oh, it makes me pissed off. Like, she's barely like 10 years old, and you're just like, can't wait for you to settle down and become part of the village. I'm like, just because you made this settling decision and you chose it does not mean you have the right to push it on other people. That pisses me off. But yeah, it's like all of these women, oh yeah, all the women there are like pointing to Kaoru to have these babies. And I'm like, that's a freaking 10-year-old girl. Just leave her alone. And they're like, oh, Kaoru's a girl too. I'm like, did you not realize she was a girl? And like, she still ain't going to school, huh? And then they're like, oh, that's right. They're like, well, there's no use forcing her to go. She's a girl after all. That line pissed me off too, because there's two implications with that line. One, she's a woman. She'll just argue with you and you're not going to get anywhere and do anything, which is misogynist. But also, it's suggesting, well, she's a woman. She doesn't have to go to school and learn anything, because her self-worth is attributed to her only being able to reproduce, is what that's suggesting. And that mentality is highly prevalent overseas in the US. Don't you worry. So it pisses me off. It pisses me off. And I felt so bad for Yoshiki because he is suffocating there. He's like, I would rather be anywhere but here right now. So these guys in his family are like, also, I don't think his dad is there. His dad is at work. Yeah, his dad's at work, and it's just these three other guys, which I don't know who the third guy's with. There's the mom and two women. I don't know who the other two guys are with. They all look like salarymen. But they're like, oh, Yoshiki, you got a girlfriend? You better cut those bangs or those girls won't want you. Ha, ha, ha. I cannot imagine how uncomfortable he feels. Because again, it's fine. If you're heterosexual, cool. If you want to have babies, cool. But the thing that always gets me is that I have never, ever in my life met a queer person that was like, you should be gay, or you should do this. Or that I've never met someone trying to push their lifestyle that's part of the LGBTQAI plus community, trying to push it on other people. They're just trying to be accepted for who they are. They don't give a shit if you're like them. But I have seen so many, and it almost makes me feel like the people doing it are almost insecure about their own decisions. Not that they're insecure about being heterosexual, but I feel like a lot of people are like, they did settle down. They maybe married somebody that they shouldn't have. They maybe made life decisions that they regret. Not that they were bad decisions, but that they feel like they regret them. And so they push that and project that insecurity onto other people because they're like, well, you need to be like me so you can regret your decisions as well. And I was like, oh, hell no. No, no, no. So, God, I feel for Yoshiki in this moment. This little scene connected so hardcore to me in my small town roots that I wanted to drag him out. And he's like, And then Hikaru's like, hey, you want to get out of here? And he's like, God, please, anything. So then we have the scene from the ED. And so at first I felt really sad where he was like, he's sorry. And Yoshiki's like, how many times have you tried to kill me now? And I was like, yeah, he's trying to kill you. He's also, you could make euphemisms, metaphors for sex, but sure. And he's like, it doesn't faze me. Let's not worry about all that. And of course, Hikaru still feels bad about the mixing and about everything because that's what's been taught to him. That prejudice has been taught to Hikaru, and now he can't stop thinking about it, thinking it's a bad thing. Whereas Yoshiki at this point is like, F it, I've been around it my whole life. No, no. And he's like, I tried to stab you, so we're even. And he's like, well, you saved my butt. Another minute and I would have suffocated to death. I love the mixing of the real life photography and the animation on top of it. I think it reminds me of Neon Genesis Evangelion in a way. If you know, you know. But it works really well. It works really well in this. And I like seeing the actual locations on display, which is really cool. He's like, I know what it's like obsessing over a place to belong. I love Yoshiki talking. He's like, I want to believe I have a home too. I love Yoshiki talking about somewhere that's not here. The title of this episode is called Its Place, which really made me mad when I first saw it because its place means that, like, which granted, Hikaru's not human. We don't even know if Hikaru has a sex. He's an entity. He's just in the body of a male boy. But there's also that othering of its place where you're like, it, instead of saying they, them for like a non-binary person, saying the word it means it's an object. It doesn't have humanity. And that's, in one way, is accurate to describe entity Hikaru, but in the other way, very derogatory. And I feel like that's intentional. But, so in the moment, you know, we get the ED scene where he makes the face, and that's where the ED ends. I wanted to know throughout the entire ED what Yoshiki's reaction was going to be to seeing him do that. And I was so happy that he laughed, that he thought it was funny. And they got to laugh in that moment. So then they're supposed to go find the scuba ring, and instead they find the salamander, which, let me just say, the scuba ring, this whole series has like a sexual connotation to it. So the idea of getting the scuba ring very much felt like, and this is going to sound like the weirdest thing in the world when I say it, but hear me out. But it sounded like the idea of a ring of something you penetrate, and that's connected to heteronormative standards. That's where I was thinking of it. The salamander, when I think of it, I think of it's a monster, but it also is talking about transformation. So I felt like it was obvious that Yoshiki picked it because he thinks it's adorable, because Yoshiki's a monster lover, and we all know this. I love that. And him holding it, it's awkward to carry around. He's like, I could squeeze the air, but then I'd feel bad for the salamander. And that in itself is a statement. Hikaru's like, well, just squeeze the air out of the salamander and make it easier. And he's like, but that would hurt the salamander, and I don't want to do that. Hikaru is being equated to the salamander float. Yoshiki does not want to do the easy way out if it means it's going to hurt Hikaru. Which is going back to the mountain seems like it's the easy way out, even though we know the obvious problems with that. But Yoshiki doesn't want him to do that because he knows Hikaru would be hurt if he did that. And then seeing him just grab the salamander is so cute. Freaking adorable, right? So I don't know the significance of the lion versus the panda and what that could mean between the two of them where they're sitting on it. I don't know if there's any symbolic cultural significance to that. But he's like, do you remember anything about being Nanuki-sama? And he's like, I have memories. I just have forgot them, but they're coming back little by little. Especially about granting requests. He's like, I feel I can make any wish come true. He's like, that's some big talk. And he's like, any wish. He's like, try me. And in that moment, we, the audience, are led to believe, would he ask for Hikaru to come back to life? And Yoshiki's like, no. One thing I love about Yoshiki's journey throughout this entire series is that he went from somebody at the beginning that selfishly wanted to keep Hikaru around, knowing it wasn't actually his best friend, but keep him around because that way he wouldn't have to deal with the death of his best friend. He could just have Hikaru replace him. But now he's matured to this point where he's like, no, my friend is dead. But this is my new friend who just happens to be in his body. So it's complicated. But I don't want to wish back my old friend because one, that's no. And two, you say it's possible, it's not. And two, that would defeat the point of you being here. And he's like, I don't want to diminish your presence. And he says, no, I'm good. And I wonder if Entity Hikaru was expecting him to wish back his friend and then he didn't. He's like, even though we know about Nanuki, we still don't know, what does he say there? We still don't know how to solve the problem of the impurities. I feel like the impurities are the main problem. Like Nanuki is like a side thing, but the impurities are the issue. And now that they've been freed from the mountain, it's like, okay. Which, it could very well be that the spirit of the unborn children were keeping this kind of barrier around the mountain inadvertently, whether or not the village intended that or not. And now that Hikaru has left the mountain, that spirit, that barrier is gone, right? I swear I've seen animal balls more times in this last month than I thought I would see in a lifetime in anime. Whether it's been Pompoko or My Neighbor Totoro or this series, I swear I've seen more animated animal testicles, especially cats and raccoons, than I would care to mention. Make them female, damn it. So I don't have to see them. Anyway, that's my tangent for the day. So he's asking about the sketch, and we have all of these questions, like, what about the Renaissance sketch? What about this? What about the organization? What about everything's been set up for season 2, which is exciting because I was afraid in this episode it would just be a giant exposition dump and we would have no actual answers, really. So I'm glad that's not the case, but I'm also like... I was like, we're going to have to wait now to find out things. Also, damn, whenever Yoshiki gets into like Bruce Wayne research mode, I worry for him, but I also really like it. And we got the cicada reference from episode 1, call back to it as the cicada flies away. And we have the cat coming back in this episode to be messed with again. I also like that the cat and Hikaru have gone on a journey from being hissed at to accepted to begrudgingly accepted, but don't mess with me sort of scenario. Works really well. So then, as we get the shadow going across the trees, he's like, pondering this won't get us anywhere. Let's go see the ocean at least once. And at that point, it's like, this is just like episode 7, just in reverse for Hikaru. Now, GPS, we have Tanaka, and he has a GPS tracker on his phone. How he's got the tracker onto either Yoshiki or Hikaru, I don't know. But we're going to have to find out next season. But that shot where you just see the shadow of his head, and he's just looming ominously, and he brought the hamster on the train. Of course he did. We'll have to see. So they made it to the ocean. Honestly, I said, if you've watched Given, you'll kind of understand a little bit different. I was feeling a little Attack on Titan vibes in this scene, if I'm not going to lie to y'all. If you know, you know. But with Given as well, and like I said a few episodes ago, there is a character in Given who ends a relationship with one character, starts a relationship with a new character. The old and new characters remind me of Hikaru put together. But there's a part where we saw the flashback of Yoshiki and Hikaru at the beach. But now with Hikaru, it's a totally different experience. And I kind of love that. I honestly, as much as what I love so much about this series is that we were built up with Yoshiki and Hikaru as a dynamic. And the dynamic that the OG Hikaru and Yoshiki had is so powerful. It's so beautiful. You can't take that away from them. But at the same time, I think the dynamic between new Hikaru and Yoshiki is totally different, but just as valid, and maybe even more so, because this new Hikaru accepts Yoshiki as a monster. He accepts him as a monster, and he accepts him, he loves him, and we're going to talk about this in the scene because it's the best scene in the whole damn series. I love this. I love this scene so much. But you have to ask the question to yourself, like, would the OG Hikaru, if Yoshiki came out to him, how would he react? I feel as if the OG Hikaru would have accepted Yoshiki, but I feel like the OG Hikaru, because he himself was closed off and because he himself was trying to conform with the village, he might have tried to persuade Yoshiki to just don't say anything and just, like, you know, go with the flow. Like, that's what we got to do. I can't say that for sure. I can't speak on OG Hikaru's behalf, but I get that vibe from what we've seen of him so far, whereas Monster Hikaru is like, F it. And that's a whole different thing. A whole different vibe. So yeah, I loved this whole scene. The sunny weather, the shoes, the water, the animation. I kept thinking, is it bad the whole time they were on the beach? And I knew Tanaka was going. I thought that one of them was going to get sniped. Like, is that bad to say? I thought Hikaru or Yoshiki was going to get hurt in this scene. I really thought it was going to happen, especially once we saw Tanaka was there. I was like, they're going to get hurt. And then they didn't, so I guess it worked out. But I was like, Now, the thing with the snake has red eyes like Hikaru. The snake does. So I don't think the snake's an impurity. So The question is, because if you believe in reincarnation and the redistribution of souls, have some of the souls, like the little red light is in the snake's eyes, like the little pills, like the light in Hikaru's eyes, are the unborn children, the Nonuki spirits, are they reincarnating into various animals and other flora and fauna around the mountain to keep it safe? Is there a tie to that? What is that scene about? We don't know, but it's as glowing eyes like him. So I wondered, and then they disappeared, and the snake went on. So I wondered if the snake, if these unborn children, if their spirits like floated around the mountain until they just connected with other flora and fauna or were reborn into other animals or people. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. And he's about to tell Yoshiki about it. And then he's like, well, it's fine. We kept our promise to go to the ocean together. And Yoshiki's like, yeah, I said that back when I was thinking of doing something horrible. And he's like, I wonder what Asako and Maki and Yuki are doing right now. And anytime you turn your back from a character and they don't get to see your face, that's when you know. And he's like, do you think they were mad at us skipping the concert? It might have been fun singing with everybody. And he talks about the lyrics saying, towards the future, this pounding in my heart now. It hits you in the feels. And then he starts to sing about a sound. Keep living that life. And Yoshiki's like, you don't have to sing. I wonder if Yoshiki was also thrown out because would the OG Hikaru have sang the same way? Or is this something he would never have done? And Yoshiki's like, I never imagined I would see Hikaru doing this. And he's like, those aren't the words. Keep talking how you talk. Even if that flower from the past fails to reignite. Oh! So he's like, keep talking about the past, even if the flower from the past fails to reignite. Like, towards the future, this pounding in my heart. And I'm assuming it's Tanaka watching them from a distance. Now. And then it's like the sun is starting to set. I don't want to make anyone sad. I don't want Yoshiki to be alone. I granted his request, and that's why I'm here. But even saying that, going back to the funeral scene, you didn't want anybody to be sad. But if you had let his body die and had the funeral, they would have been sad. And you would have left Yoshiki alone. So you're granting his request. Like, that's why you're here. I'm glad he finally tells Yoshiki about this. I'm glad they finally have this conversation. He's like, that was his wish. I probably can't see it through to the end. And that's when Yoshiki's like, bullshit, you're not returning to the mountain. You're going to see it through the end. You just said that that's what you're going to do. I love how I felt so bad for Yoshiki and how distraught he was. But I'm glad that this finally made Yoshiki come to terms with his emotions and to talk to Hikaru one-on-one about it. And Hikaru's like, well, I keep attacking you. I think that's who I am. It's trying to come out. He's like, I'm not human. I keep wanting to fill up these empty parts of me. And I crave souls. Humans wouldn't understand. And I think I've been like this the whole time. Well, but there's something, the cells and everything inside of him also kind of look like the village. So I feel like there's something to that. But like, is there a way to satisfy him to an extent? We need to know more. He's like, I killed a lot of people and I might start killing them again. But I don't want to kill you, Yoshiki. Ugh. And he's like, no, wait a minute. He's like, you're making some assumptions. We don't know. We haven't done all of our research. We don't know exactly what to do. He's like, if I climb back up to that mountain, things would be peaceful at least for the rest of your life. And he's like, you don't know that. And for Yoshiki, again, it's seeing this mirror of him where Yoshiki's like, you can't just go back in the closet. Things aren't going to get better because I know myself. If I do that, it's not going to get better either. He's like, what do we do all that research for? He's like, the monster goes away and you can accept Hikaru's death. and move on with your normal life and live happily ever after. Which is what, I'm glad he's saying this out loud, because we the audience know that that's not the case. And he's like, you want to stay here, don't you? Freaking idiot. What about the half that you gave me? I'm sorry. Okay, look. I know that we've had the whole BL conversation and that it's not meant to be that way, but it's episode 12, and I'm just going to say it. It is. It is. It is. And being a boy's love does not mean that it's yaoi. Does not mean that it's all about romance or sexual attraction. But you have two characters. I know one is an entity and does not technically ascribe to a specific gender, but he's in a male body, so humor me, that they love each other. And it's not just, it's queer platonic, it's beyond sexual and romantic. It is something that is soulmate worthy, is that love they have for each other. So whether or not you want to say that it falls under the tag or not, it's there. It's there, and the mangaka has always known it's going to be there, but we live, unfortunately, in a primarily heteronormative world that's not ready to be tolerating and accepting, and so make your bills however you got to, but we all know. We watching know. We all know that it is, right? He's like, you're immortal. You could ditch the body whenever you want, right? And when I say that he's like, you want a place, it almost feels like a breakup scene, because Hikaru is saying like, well, I just need to go back to the mountain. It's not you, it's me. And Yoshiki's like, bullshit. And when he says, you want a place you belong, he's not talking about the village, because we've talked in previous episodes. We know Hikaru doesn't like the village. He doesn't care about the village. But Yoshiki's like, you're not breaking up with me. No, you're not leaving me. I'm this home you found. You're not leaving it because you're this home that I've found, and I'm not ready to leave you either. And he's like, well, I don't know if I could leave this body now. And he's like, see, we don't know at all how it works. Well, I can't go along with a reckless plan like that. He's like, but is it the only plan we've got? And it's not the only plan they've got. Like, Hikaru is trying to make this a binary where it's one or the other. And this world, much like our own world, is not restricted to two binaries. There's a lot of in between. And there's a lot of factors we don't even know about. He's like, I don't know if it's the right blend. He's like, who cares? You don't have to do what is right. And that is so important for Yoshiki to say, because Yoshiki's like, I've been told my entire life what is right and what to do, and I don't want to do it. So if that makes me wrong, I'll take it. If that makes me a monster, I'll take it. He's like, but I'm not going to do something that's going to make me hate myself. And he knows that if Hikaru goes to the mountain, he's going to hate himself. He's like, can you just not care about that stuff? Because he's like, don't care about it, because again, it's a reflection of me. If you don't care, if you accept that you're a monster and that it's okay to not follow the norm, then that shows me that I don't have to either, right? And then Hikaru grabs his hand and says, Hikaru's favorite food was watermelon, but mine is ice cream. And he's like, I prefer Papicho over Gachi Gachi Kun. I'm probably a cat guy, which makes sense. I like movies too. Not a single movie I saw was boring to me. He's like, Hikaru hated schoolwork, but I love it. And he's like, well, I'm not that I'm any good at it. And Yoshiki tells him to stop, not because he's expressing that he's different than the OG Hikaru. Because Yoshiki has moved to the point where he accepts entity Hikaru Nonuki for who he is. But Yoshiki's like, if you say this, it's making it sound like you're going to leave forever. And he's like, no, I know you're not like OG Hikaru. I've gotten to the point where I'm fine with that. You don't have to say it. You're making it sound like you're less because you're not the OG Hikaru, but that's not the case. And poor Yoshiki, the expression on his face is heartbreaking. He's like, please stop. Because it's making him confront it too. It was fun spending time with you, Yoshiki. To you, I might have been just a replacement for Hikaru. And we go back to those scenes at the very beginning of the series where he kind of was, and to the point at the stream where it all came out. But despite what I am, you gave me so much. And I love you, Yoshiki. I love this scene so much because he's literally confessing. He's like, I love you. Like, whether OG Hikaru would have ever said that out loud to him, we don't know. We will never know. But he's like, I love you, and I love everything we've done despite what's happened. And then he's just like, maybe not in a kind of romantic or friendly way. And poor Yoshiki's face. Yoshiki's face is like absolutely horrified. Because I mean, if you try to imagine your best friend telling you that they love you, but you know it's not your best friend, it's another entity, and it's simultaneously a reflection of your own feelings. You love Hikaru, and now Hikaru's telling you that you love you, and you're seeing yourself basically through Hikaru saying what you've been wanting to say, but have been too afraid to say it. And he's like, maybe not in a romantic or friendly kind of way, but it's different from any human emotion altogether. It's freaking banana fish is what it is. But yeah. And I think Yoshiki's horror is that this monster in front of him, with air quotes, is literally able to say something he's not been able to say himself. And he's like, but still, and that's when the hat drops. He's like, that's how I feel. It's truly how I feel. Not as Hikaru, but as the monster I really am. And that's the thing. Again, it's the mirror in that moment. And he's like, no. And we see behind Yoshiki, it's like, you don't have to be normal. And we see him saying it. And we see Yoshiki surrounded by all these hetero couples in the background. And he's like, that's not me. He's like, that's not who I am. And he's like, who's the monster here? And he's like, I've been the monster trying to... And Yoshiki is lamenting because he's like, I've been trying to make you into a normal human, but what I was trying to do to you is exactly what I've been against from my own village this entire time. And this feeling of suffocation is what I've been feeling. And he's like, it's me. I've hidden my true self. And we go back to that scene where he was watching Hikaru and seeing his body. Like I've been hiding how I truly feel. That's why I want him to be saved. And then the hat splashes in the water and Yoshiki says, because being with you saves me just the same. Yoshiki's like, look, he's like, I want you to be safe because if you're safe, that means I can be safe with you and we save each other. And this whole scene's amazing. I love this scene so much. And the bubble bursts. And then as he's looking down at the hat, he's like, this whole time I was just being selfish. I only wanted you safe because that made me safe, but I wasn't considering how forcing this all on you was affecting you. And then I like the idea that we had the village version of Yoshiki because it's like the brain people again. It's the mouth of the brain people. And it's like Hikaru's sake, the village is safe. I've just been passing the buck to someone else. And like him laughing as he's saying it, he's like, I'm desperate. I'm doing this all for myself at the end of the day. And he sees this reflection of himself. He sees himself like, and I like it's kind of the monster outline like Hikaru has been. Hikaru's been the monster outline where you don't see what's inside, just the rigid like little white line art around it. And then the red version is like the brain people version of him. And he's like, thanks for everything. And he does the thing with his stupid fingers. And Yoshiki's like, you are not leaving. He's like, no. He's like, you're not a replacement. I'm so glad that he finally told him he's not a replacement. I'm so glad this happens. This conversation's amazing. You're just giving up. Saying I should move on, it's too late for that. And then the brain version says there's nothing wrong with Hikaru's choice. I love that the back and forth in his head, and it finally all comes together in the end. He's like, do you know how hard I busted my butt for you? I like that Yoshiki's like, I'm an asshole and I'm selfish. Now I'm going to tell you about it. He's like, I've worked so hard for this. Oh, and he's like, but he's an actual. And I like that the brain version of Yoshiki in the reflection is saying he's an actual monster, not like me. And Yoshiki's like, no, I am a monster. I've been trying to say that I'm not. I've been trying to push it off and say I'm not a monster, but I am. I'm the same as you. So why should I judge you? I love it. He's like, do you think I'm okay with this? He's like, I don't want to leave either. I love them fighting back and forth. He's like, I don't want to go. He's like, the monster will go away and we'll live happily ever after, like mirroring the words that Hikaru just told him. And I love that Yoshiki gets back up and he's like, what was all this for then? And then there's a moment of silence before the brain version says, I don't want that. Yeah, he's like, well, that's what I'm saying. You can stop now. He's like, you don't have to keep playing. The animation of this whole scene is so good. It's so damn good. I could watch this for days. He's like, you can stop. You don't have to pretend anymore. And Yoshiki's like, I'm not pretending. He's like, I'm going to the mountain. He's like, quit saying that selfish crap. Meanwhile, while these two young men are having a tryst in the ocean, coming to terms with their sexuality and feelings for one another, Tanaka's being a character from Chainsaw Man doing the picturesque scene part here. I won't say that character's name because it would be a spoiler, but if you know, you know. You've got to get rid of me and get rid of this monster, which was Tanaka's goal. So that's what's best for you, ain't it? I like the Tanaka the hamster just sitting there letting all this go down, being like, we're going to let them work this all out. I don't know what his motivations are. It's kind of scary. But he can hear this entire thing. He can hear all of this. So he knows how these two boys are. And he's like, I'm a monster too. You don't gotta be normal. And he's like, even if I'm just being selfish, I'm always hiding my true self so nobody finds out what I really am. I love that Yoshiki confesses. I love that he confesses his sexuality, who he is, that he's a monster too. In the views of everybody in the village, I love it. And then he connects to Hikaru in this moment. And then like the two merge, the brain version and his version. And he's like, Hikaru, I don't care if you're a killer. I'm with you. It's you and me. Yes. And then him like falling to his knees, I'm like, I don't know. You think what you want out of that. You think what you want. Bonnie and Clyde, bitches. These two are like, we're both messed up, and that's okay. We're both monsters, and that's okay. We're gonna be just actual disasters together. Hope that's all right. You ain't a replacement for Hikaru. I love it. I just don't want you to disappear on me. Yeah, I'm a shitty and selfish asshole. And I like that Yoshiki's like totally fine with that. He's like, I know how I am. It's okay. And he's like, that's how you really feel, huh? I love it. And he's like, okay. And just Hikaru crying, being like, okay, we're both assholes together. It's fine. And the funny thing is, they're not assholes. They're not shitty people. They're both actually amazing, accepting, open-minded people. But they're just young and they're going against what this stupid village deems acceptable. And my heart soars for them in this moment. It's so good. And the idea of Hikaru doing the little head fluffy thing on Yoshiki, stop right there. Hold the phone. Stop it. Oh my God. Oh man. It took you long enough. Now what am I supposed to do? You could tell Hikaru wanted Yoshiki to react that way. He wanted Yoshiki to break down and say he didn't want him to leave and all of this and confess everything he just did. And so, I love that scene. And it also looks like a monster that's at this like forefront of power looking down on a human, but fondly. He's like, are you going to go get that salamander? Oh, God, I love these two. They're so good. He's like, this salamander is floating away. He's like, you got to take it home or Kaoru's going to cry. Like, and then Yoshiki's like, no. I love the way that Hikaru looks over at it. Like, you got to take it home so Kaoru won't cry. Like, are we going back to the village? Are we going back to that standard? And the way Yoshiki responds by saying in that moment, like looking up at him, as he's crying himself. And he's like, no, I don't need it. Let it float far away. I feel like the float was not just for Kaoru, but it was really for him, like that tether back to the village and that heteronormative environment. And he's just like, no, screw that. He's like, you're even more of a brat than I am. I could rave about that scene all day. So then at the very end, they're on the beach together. And shoes still off, soaked. And who walks up with the salamander? He looks over to Hikaru. And they're just looking at each other. And that's when he notices Tanaka. Tanaka got the salamander. Uh-huh. And then we're left on the finale. How dare they? How dare they? Oh my God. It was a confession. A confession in the ocean it gave me more than I wanted. This episode was amazing. It gave me everything I could want. Now the two of them are on equal playing fields deciding, let's go do this shit. Now we're going to move forward together. Thank God they didn't make us wait till season 2 for that. Now we just have to wait for season 2 for everything else. So, anyway, we've got some amazing shows on this channel, so I hope you go check those out and see what's coming out this month in October, because there's some amazing shows to watch, trust and believe. But I am definitely going to keep up watching BL on this channel. We've got Cherry Magic that's going to be a volume event out next week on the channel as the break in between this and the new series. It's a romance series coming out after that. But I'll be keeping BL on this channel. Don't you be worrying about any of that. There's going to be BL to come for sure. And in the meantime, I hope you enjoy the other series on the channel. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts down below. I am sad that we're on a Hikaru hiatus now, but I'm so happy that we're getting a season 2. Yes. So it has been so much fun to watch this summer with you all. I cannot believe that we're ending for now. But in the meantime, I'm excited to hear your comments down below. What you thought of the finale. Please no spoilers to the manga to come. I will find out. Trust and believe. And we'll do a manga review and behind the scenes review as it gets closer to season 2. So I'm a teacher and a hyper planner, so it will happen. Do not worry. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah. I'll be back very soon with some more reactions and down the road, some more Summer Hikaru Died. And we'll see some more BL then. Bye!